Hello and welcome to Hong Kong Lit Club, the monthly show for written word enthusiasts hoping to embark on a literary journey through Hong Kong. In this podcast, we will explore what happens when we look beyond Hong Kong as an Asian financial hub and a so-called cultural desert. My name is Julia and I will be your host. I'm a librarian by trade, a Hong Konger at heart, and someone who believes in the power of words to tell the story of a city. Without further ado, let's dive in. Who are the writers of Hong Kong, and what do they have to say? How does a storyteller give voice to the silenced, whether by history, by hatred, or by simple silence itself? How can a poem capture a moment of fear and a novel mend the broken threads of the past? Welcome to today's Hong Kong Lit Club. Today we're exploring the powerful work of author Ritu Hemnani. Ritu is an award-winning writer on a mission to inspire young readers, believing fiercely that every child deserves to see themselves in a book. As a former teacher who never saw her own story reflected on the page, she now writes to ensure that other children hear a vital message in her work. Your name, your face, your life, they belong in the pages too. She brings this mission to life in her 2 published books, which tackle the pivotal moments in history with grace and courage. In her middle grade novel in verse, Lion of the Sky, she tells the story of 12-year-old Raj, whose world is shattered when the partition of India forces him to flee his home as a refugee. It's a powerful story of identity and hope, inspired by true family history. And in her picture book, Gope and Meera, a migration story, she explores the same heartbreak through the lens of 2 best friends separated as their homeland is divided. It's a tender tale of love and resilience that carries a culture across borders. Ritu's work doesn't just recount history, it makes us feel its deepest human tremors. And that same unflinching empathy is at the heart of the poem we're focusing on today. We're going to take a close look at Mind the Gap. While her books deal with vast historical divides, this poem brings the theme of division into a modern, urgent context. It uses the familiar warning from the London Underground as a chilling backdrop for a different kind of danger, the xenophobia and racism faced by people of Chinese descent during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll explore how this poem captures a moment of hypervigilance, public harassment, and the deafening silence of bystanders. It's a raw look at the social gaps of prejudice that can be just as perilous as any physical chasm. So please join us for a deep and necessary conversation about the work of Ritu Hemnani. Before the deep dive section of the episode, we will listen to Ritu read the poem herself. For context, I have added an audio excerpt from a youth rally that took place in June 2020 in Phoenix, Arizona, where you will hear the words of a certain world leader that constitute the premise of the poem. This is a stark reminder, in case you needed one, of the vital importance of speaking up against ignorance, injustice, and unapologetic stupidity.
Mind the Gap. I board the tube at Leicester Square after a happy reunion with Hong Kong friends under the red paper lanterns and golden dragons of Chinatown. I can still smell the crispy roast duck, taste the tender crunch of sesame chicken and rice vermicelli in a soup warm and flavorful, like my memories of home. The train screeches and squeaks, rocking gently as people get lost in books and screens. Doors open at Piccadilly Circus to a Chinese man and his son, and though I'm Indian with eyes, hair and skin so different, I smile when I hear the clitter-clatter of Cantonese, like the sound of mahjong tiles. "Why do we have to go to the hospital?" asks the boy. "There's an Asian lady who is sick. She needs stem cells to live, and I might be a match," says his father. "Don't you need stem cells?" The man smiles. I have enough to share.
The next station is Covent Garden.
I'm so busy listening, I barely notice the glaring eyes, tight fists, and blood-filled faces. People retreat, shooting dirty looks at the man and boy, as if these people carry disease. Now my fists clench too. A man scowls and shouts, "Learn to speak English, Chinese virus!" The Chinese man looks up in shock. "Go home, Kung Flu," growls the woman. The man's trembling arms reach around his son, and my heart thuds in my chest as heat surges through me. "Stop it!" I shout. "This man is a hero, on his way to the hospital to save a life." I open fire, shooting down bricks of ignorance, fear, and hatred with bullets of empathy, compassion, and truth. The train is quiet. The shouters turn away to hide their shame. People return to books and screens like nothing happened. The old man stares at me, the Indian woman who did what he didn't expect. "Thank you," he says, "for speaking my language." There are some languages, I say with a smile as I step off the train, we should all speak.
Mind the gap.
There's never been anything where they have so many names. I could give you 19 or 20 names for that, right? It's got all different names. Wuhan. Wuhan was catching on. Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yeah. Kung flu.
So I'm here with Ritu in our little recording booth at the Eaton Hotel. It's nice and cozy in here on a summer afternoon. And Ritu has just read her powerful piece, Mind the Gap, which we're going to discuss in a moment. But first, I'd like to say that we've come full circle because, Ritu, can you tell me a little bit about your past as a radio DJ, which I've just found out? I would love to know a little bit more.
Okay, so back in the day, Exeter University days, a 963 on the medium wave, I was a DJ on University Radio Exeter. I had a weekly show every Thursday night where I would come an hour early and I would pick out all my favorite songs. I would make a playlist of all the songs I was going to play. I had my own jingle. I'd spent the weekend running around restaurants in Exeter trying to find sponsorship for prizes. And I had a jingle for the news that I would play on the hour, and the news would play and I would bring up that little part. And then I had, friends ringing in with dedications. And it was just a wonderful weekly passion project for me. And it was the best time. So it's so wonderful to be sitting in a radio station with you today, Julia. Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for all you do to shine a light on Hong Kong writers. And just really elevate the power of writing and the importance of words.
Oh, thank you so much, Ritu. Well, it really means a lot to me that you're here on the show. I feel like this has been a while coming. We actually met a while back in a drama workshop during COVID, of all places.
We did.
But of course, I already knew about your writing career and I was very eager to connect more. So it's fantastic that we're finally here to discuss your work. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm so looking forward to it.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We're going to talk about Mind the Gap. That's our focus piece for today. And then we will extend a bit more to your other works, your published verse novel, etc. But first, we're going to talk about the poem you've just read, Mind the Gap. So Mind the Gap obviously is a well-known phrase associated with the London Underground and even the Hong Kong MTR. But it also feels metaphorical here. So what gaps cultural, emotional, or linguistic were you hoping to explore in this poem?
Yeah, so Mind the Gap is often heard, well, always heard on the London Underground, on the tube, just when as you approach a new station. And we're talking about the physical gap between the train door and the station platform. Mind the gap, don't fall, it's a warning. And in the same way, this poem serves as a warning about the cultural gaps between communities. And that gap is caused through misunderstanding and through prejudices against people you don't really understand. And often those framed views that people have are based on one experience with a single person, or maybe an article they read about someone from a certain community, and they've decided, oh, the whole community is like that. And I feel that there's no single story. You know, just because one person from a community might be a certain way, that doesn't mean you can label the whole community that way. In the same way, it addresses the emotional gap. You have certain people who empathize with communities of difference, and you have other people who judge communities of difference, thinking they are lesser than. And I think it's really important that we take a big step back and realize that we're going to have these gaps always, unless we can bridge the gap. And the only way we can bridge this gap is through empathy and understanding. And so that's what this poem aims to do, to invite readers in so that they can understand the emotional, cultural distances that need bridging in our society.
I think it's a very clever metaphor, especially in a place like the tube, where obviously you'll be stuck in that small space with people from all over, from all walks of life in that short amount of time. And like you said, I think we do jump to conclusions a lot. We don't know who people are. We don't know their story, but we might make up a whole story that is not theirs. So that's why I find your piece so powerful. And I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people who've read it as well, or who've just listened to you read it. The poem shifts from warm nostalgia to tension and confrontation. So why did you choose to frame this moment of racial hostility within the context of food, memory, and community? It starts off as something a bit warm and fuzzy, and then it ends with, so it's actually a lot of violence, confrontation, and a sort of realization at the end. But why did you decide to frame this moment of tension within something that started off as a piece of nostalgia?
I would say that food and memory are universal experiences we can all relate to, and they evoke a sense of belonging, they evoke a sense of community. I chose the examples of the scent of Peking duck, roast Peking duck, the crunchy sesame's chicken, and the warm soup and vermicelli soup. But everyone has their go-to foods that remind them of home. And even though they may not have ever tasted the foods I'm talking about, everyone understands that connection, that sense of rootedness, that sense of belonging. And the protagonist in this poem is making that connection with her Hong Kong people. It's warm, it's wonderful. She's having this incredible reunion. And I wanted to have this nostalgic frame because I wanted to show the great stark contrast with the violence that's experienced, that's witnessed on this tube. It's not right in any capacity. And I think without even saying it's not right, when you journey with this woman and you understand her deep, warm feelings for these people, for their food, for the sounds, the clitter-clatter of mahjong tiles is their voice, she's so happy to see them. And then that you contrast it with the anger and the completely undeserved attack on this poor man and his boy. You don't need her to say, it makes me feel pain. You feel the pain with her. And that was the intention, that you experience. It's a visceral feeling of pain to see that these wonderful people are being attacked for no reason at all.
And I think it's very powerful that the narrator is Indian and that she recognizes this shared culture that she has, or she knows of the language of Cantonese, she knows of the food. And that man, the Chinese man and his son who are being attacked, the victims, they don't know that about her until she speaks up at the end. So they would have no idea, right? So they could also make up their whole story of who she is if they wanted to, not knowing that this woman who's right next to them understands exactly where they come from and shares this culture. So I think that's a very clever sort of mirror image that I'm sure we'll get to as well. But because you talked about foods, I'm sorry, I have to add something that I haven't put in our prep questions. You said the taste of home. You said that was that food is a shared, the collective experience, and we always have shared memories of food. So can I ask you, if this is not too hard, if you had to give me some examples of food that means home?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, growing up in Hong Kong, I was born and brought up in Hong Kong, so dim sum straight away. But also a mix of dal chawal, which is lentils and rice, and it's a Sindhi cuisine. Chicken makanwala, butter chicken. And for me, we loved Korean barbecue growing up. We loved Indonesian food, nasi goreng. So for me, home was a whole plethora of different foods. And they all just had, it all just evoked different memories. Or Saturday afternoon, we'll have Indian curry fish. And you transported back into that place when you eat that food. So yeah, so many different. I think we're very spoilt in Hong Kong to have all the rich flavors that we get to enjoy. And we're so blessed.
Yeah, absolutely mouth-watering. I have to say also that the booth we're recording in is in the middle of a food court. So I feel like some of these dishes you've mentioned might be available around here. Might need a bit of a snack after.
I think so.
Once we're done. I want to talk about the violence that is aimed towards this man and his son in the poem. The Chinese man's act of potential stem cell donation is quietly heroic. And yet it's met with xenophobia. So how do you think COVID heightened these existing tensions? I don't know if that's what you had in mind. I immediately thought of COVID. Must be because you talked about the Kung flu.
Yes.
So is that exactly, are you taking us back to that time?
Absolutely.
How do you think that COVID had a role to play in all this?
I think what COVID did more than anything was exacerbate the fear. And I think globally, everyone was helpless. And I think when people are helpless, they don't know what to do. And what people tend to do is strive to find control. And people claim that control in asserting blame. And I think people needed to blame somebody for this terrible flu that had stopped the world. The whole world came to a stop. And people were frustrated, people were out of jobs, people were scrambling to find toilet paper, hand sanitizer. People didn't know if they were going to live another day. There was so much fear. And so what could people do? Well, they could assign blame to the origin story of the coronavirus. Where did it come from? Who started it? Who's to blame? Let's hurt them, and then we can feel like we're doing something proactive. And of course, you can't blame a whole nation of people. You can't assault innocent people around the world, name-calling or putting them in a coma, or worse still, having them killed, and just the horrifying stories of people from the very young to the very old and helpless being attacked. I was angry, and I wanted to stand up and say, look, these are biases that have just been ramped up because of all this fear. And more than anything, what we need to do is be advocating for understanding and empathy now more than ever.
Yes, you're right. It's all about these microaggressions, isn't it? It's like you said, people feel powerless and all they can do is just attack this other person who's just minding their own business and has, of course, absolutely nothing to do with what is happening with the pandemic. So if we talk about the structure and craft of the poem, there are obviously a lot of sensory details, which is why it's such a good poem. So smells, tastes, sounds, which make the poem very vivid. How did you decide which sensory elements to highlight when writing about memory and place?
So I wanted to draw on my own memories. I grew up in Hong Kong. I went to Bradbury School, Island School, and I had a great amount of international school friends. And most of them don't live in Hong Kong anymore. They all moved, many of them moved to the UK. And so I enjoyed many happy reunions with them in Chinatown in London. So when I was thinking back about all the sounds and smells to bring this poem to life, I remembered the foods that we ordered. So everything that I wrote was initially based on memory, the memory of the crunch of the chicken as we shared it together. And these are international people, but we all called Hong Kong home. So it was really special to me because there were elements of truth that were inputted into this. And I think that doing that created the warmth and the nostalgia, and it makes it a very immersive experience because people can taste what you taste, they can feel what you feel, they can hear, and it just makes it come alive.
Yes, and you managed to do that in very few words, which is obviously the challenge of a poem usually. Not lengthy descriptions of the dishes and everything, but just a few words, like you said, that crispiness of the chicken, and we can already see that, or we can taste it, which is why it's so powerful again. The dialogue in the poem feels especially very natural, especially the boy's innocent questions. I want to ask you how you approach writing dialogue in poetry where every word has to carry weight.
Good question. So my first love is acting. Since I was a little girl, I've been performing throughout all the school plays and musicals. Some friends and I used to put on charity plays at the Hong Kong Adventist Hospital. Within my Indian community, I was always directing a play, writing a script for something or the other. So drama is just natural for me. And I think that very much led to my career in English and drama teaching. And I think having that background, I very much step into the shoes of the character. I imagine where this man and this boy were before they got on the tube. I imagine where they're going and how it's going to be at the hospital. Is he going to be a match for the stem cells? These are questions I don't answer in the poem, but these are things that I think through to give full life to who I'm talking about. And so I think that really helps to bring these characters to life. And yes, every word carries weight. So what I make sure I do is read aloud. I read my poems aloud, and that's so helpful, I think, for every writer, just to make sure, does this carry this poem forward? Does it make you feel a certain way? If not, cut the word. It's not worth keeping in. So you've got to be really ruthless with your own writing.
Very selective. I'm actually going to ask you a bit more about that. You mentioned the backstory of the characters. So would you actually go and make a character card? That's what I'm thinking when you said that, of sort of exactly who they are, their age, where they come from, what they're going to do next. Is that something you really do, or do you just think about it?
I tend to. I write character Bibles usually for the storybooks I'm writing, but also for the poems sometimes, because it just helps me flesh out that character and really bring them to life, because that answers so many questions about the way they would speak, the things they're used to doing. This boy, he doesn't fight with his father. He doesn't question him. He goes along with him. His only question is, don't you need your own stem cells? Which is, very innocent, of course, but clearly they have a very respectful, good relationship. The father is a very kind man. You can tell from just the few questions the son asks that he's curious, but he's very happy to go along with him. And I think that's established because I've gone back and I've done the groundwork to try and understand the background of these characters and their relationship.
And would you always read your own poem out loud when you're writing to make sure every word carries it forward, or do you need to hear someone else reading it?
No, I tend to read it. I have 3 children and I put them all to use one by one. In fact, this morning when I was having breakfast and one by one they came out, I said, can I read you my poem? I'm going to be on a podcast today. And one by one they said, okay. And because they all came out at separate times, I got to read it 3 times to them.
I know they orchestrated that purposefully.
I think so.
They knew it. They knew you were going to ask.
I'm just glad that they keep saying yes and they don't say, no, I don't want to hear your poems, Mum.
So you've got the family support.
I do, and I'm very grateful.
The poem has a cinematic quality. It unfolds like a scene in a film, or at least that's how I saw it. I felt like I was watching a film, a bit in slow motion, because not a lot happens. It's a very quick moment, isn't it?
Yes.
But then it just has that pace of where you can see a close-up maybe on someone's face, and you can see exactly what the tension is here. So do you visualize your poems as you write them, or does the rhythm guide you?
I would say a bit of both. I definitely do visualize. I write as if I'm writing for the screen or a play. I'm very much actress on the stage converted to writer on the page. So I'm actress first. I'm stepping into the shoes of each character. So I'm the father, and then I'm the son, and then I'm the woman, and then I'm the horrible man or woman who's, angry. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say horrible. I should just say misguided. Or just ignorant, perhaps. And I don't think there are any horrible people. I think there are just scared people. And we need to empathize with them as well, right? Yes. So apologies to the man and woman that I just insulted. Yeah, and for me, it's about building tension and emotion every single scene. So every stanza for me is like a new scene, and I'm very much aware of that, building the tension, and then at the end having a little bit of release, so that you've got time to think and breathe and take in everything that's just happened.
Would you say that your background in drama, I'm making this very difficult for Ritu because I have not written this question either in advance, but she's great, so she can whip something up in a moment. Would you say that your background in drama has given you that courage to not shy away from difficult characters that maybe you don't really want to write about? Like, again, this person we said who's misguided and insulting this man on the tube. Is that because you have this background of drama that maybe helped you build empathy or just impersonate different characters? Do you think that had a role to play in your writing and exploration of a range of characters or not?
I think if you don't have tension, you don't have story. You need that tension. You need all kinds of characters. What I love is actually when you have an antagonist and then you show what made him become an antagonist. Because there is, as I say, no single story. And there's always backstory. And there's usually a reason for people to be the way they are. Hurt people tend to hurt people. But when we realize that they are originally hurt, we can feel such different feelings for them as well. And I always feel like there's always more to the story. And I love to explore that. Yes, I would say it started off in theatre, in the drama studio, just creating all kinds of characters that were multidimensional.
Yes.
And it just opens your perspective to the way people behave, the way people think, and the possibilities there are for change.
Empathy is the key here. I feel like that would be our key word for today. Let's talk about your writing process, your inspiration, and your current and future projects. This poem feels deeply personal, so of course I have to ask. I purposefully waited. Didn't want to ask you this first, but that was the first question that came to mind, though, this one. Was this poem inspired by real experience, or is it a composite of observations, and how did it come to life on the page?
Great question again. I think it was a bit of a blend. So during SARS back in 2003, pregnant women were falling ill and there was all kinds of commotion, and I fell pregnant, and my OB/GYN suggested I move to the UK if I had a home there, and my father happens to have a home there. So I moved back there, and when my husband would visit and would be on the underground tube, it would be really funny whenever Chinese people walked onto the tube. First of all, we just felt this great sense of joy because I was far away from home, I was pregnant, and it was just wonderful to see a whole bunch of Chinese people come on the tube because it was like, oh, I feel like I'm at home. And it would be great because he would whisper into my ear what they were saying. And they had no idea we understood what they were saying. And we weren't trying to be mean and eavesdrop or anything. Most of the time, it was just an innocent conversation. Like, you know, a mother was fighting with her husband saying, why did you take so long? Da, 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 or more like he was saying it to her. And we would just have a little giggle about it. And so when I came to write this poem, I remembered that happy, joyful feeling of seeing Chinese people enter the tube. And that was juxtaposed with the deep anger I felt when I read in the newspaper and I heard on the news about people who looked just like the people in my home country being attacked, being physically put in the hospital because of the way they looked, because of who they were, being slandered, being told to go home. And I just thought that that's just not okay. It's unacceptable. And I want to voice this. I want to say something about this. And so this image, this character of this man who has great intention to go and help another person in a hospital with his innocent son came to my mind. And I went back to the tube where I had that wonderful experience with my husband and the joy of seeing, you know, Chinese people come on. And then I linked that with the happy reunions I'd had in Chinatown. And so it was all a mishmash of memories, experiences, and my feelings of deep anger and wanting to say something about it.
The following audio excerpt comes from a video published by The Telegraph on February 13th, 2020.
Our thoughts are also with those who suffer from the coronavirus and also with the Chinese community in this country, who are, I'm sorry to say, facing increasingly alarming levels of racism.
I feel very sad, and also I don't know how to react at that time.
I'm really frustrated when somebody just shot at me, coronavirus.
I do feel on guard, and I feel that a lot of people in the Chinese community feel the same way. When you've grown up in a different country with a different system, you might not feel comfortable enough going to the police.
Very aware now that if we stand on a tram or a train or a bus and we're coughing or sniffing, people are looking at us, so I feel very conscious.
We don't want to wear the mask, but we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect the people here. We don't want to make trouble to this country, so that's why we wear the mask to protect everybody here.
Overreactions by individual countries, panic among the public, and even insulting and discriminatory remarks and behavior targeting the overseas Chinese community.
If you could hope for one thing that a reader could take away from Mind the Gap, what would it be?
I think that worse than the spread of the coronavirus was the rapid spread of the hatred virus. So my hope would be for readers to understand the importance of speaking the language of kindness and compassion. I don't think there's anything more important. I think that empathy can bridge the gap between cultures, and I think it's needed now more than ever.
You've touched on the double meaning of language just now. Obviously, when the man says, "Thank you for speaking my language," we can tell that there's a double meaning here of meaning Cantonese, but also, like you said, the language of kindness.
Yes.
And as we continue into our uncertain future, unfortunately, there might be more pandemics or more sort of global crises like this. So what you've just said, I think, is something that rings a bell as an educator, something that we want to bring to children, and we want to make sure that, because they are the ones who will have a role to play later on, aren't they? So how do you go about your school visits? What do you do there with the kids? What do you talk about? Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I have 2 books that have come out. I self-published a book called Gope and Meera, A Migration Story in 2017. And it's based on the 1947 partition of India, the largest mass migration in world history. And when I go into schools, I'm presenting it in very much a human migration talk, which talks about the push factors and the pull factors and the difficulties that arise from people who have to leave their only home with no time to prepare, what they carry with them, what they have the chance to take with them, but also what they have to leave behind. And I think in Hong Kong, schools, children are extremely privileged. And so it's a real wake-up call that, there were millions affected. And I make them guess how many millions. And when they hear that it's over 14 million people who lost their homes and over 1 million who died, they're just shocked. And we talk about migration stories, not just in India, but around the world. And we talk about the plight of migrants, and we talk about what we can do as community members to lend a hand and help. And I think that's really important in opening their eyes to the fact that they don't need to be an adult to make a difference. They can save up a bit of pocket money, they can go and volunteer, they can donate clothes, blankets, anything they have to anyone less fortunate than themselves. There's always something that they can effectively do. Then my second book, which came out last year, it's a middle grade novel in verse called Lion of the Sky, came out in 2024. And I've been absolutely thrilled with its reception because novels in verse are gaining popularity in classrooms across the world because they're really powerful for reluctant readers and equally very popular with very advanced readers, people can read them and feel so accomplished. They've read this really thick text and they've delved through all of this poetry and it's impactful. And not only that, we can then go on to write and explore the power of verse in the classroom. And kids tend to resonate really well because they're moments of tension. I always leave them on the cliffhanger at the end and they're all kind of like, we want the book, we want to buy it because we want to know what happens to Maya. And I've been thrilled because I've had starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Kirkus. It won the Evanston Best Book of 2024, selected for the Hong Kong Battle of the Books, was a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection, Bank Street Best Children's Book 2025. I could go on, but, I've just been so humbled because people have, warmly welcomed this book of my heart. And it's a history I never thought would be important to anyone because I never saw myself in the pages of the book when I was a child. I never thought that my story mattered. And now when I go in, there are always one or two Indian kids at the back of the classroom. And when they see me, they kind of shrink a little bit, thinking, oh gosh, is she going to be embarrassing? And then I'll open with a joke and then they'll sit up a bit taller. And, by the middle of the session, their hands are in the air and they're like, oh, she's actually quite cool. And I'm thinking, yes, they're proud to see someone representing their country, their heritage, their culture. And it makes me feel good because I never had that. I never had that as a kid. I never thought that my story, I could ever be the star in my story. And now I'm hoping that these kids grow up thinking, hey, if, she's such a cool person and she's representing who I am, that means I'm cool. And that means I can be the star of my story. And that means everything to me.
Yes. And as a librarian, I know that these author talks, author visits have a profound impact that can sometimes only materialize years later. So although I'm sure you have lots of kids who come to you and share, how this has helped them, or like you said, maybe open their eyes in some way, I know there are also all the quiet ones who might not tell you this now, but they've heard you, they've written with you, they've practiced that, and then this will stay with them. I'm sure it will have some sort of impact later on.
I hope so.
Really meaningful.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, I receive letters that are overwhelming from the teachers, from the students, and writers go on and they send me their poetry, and it's the best thing in the world.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. So I want to talk a bit about how, again, adding something here because this is so interesting. How did you go from self-published to, how do we call it? Traditionally published. Yes.
So I went to the Artist Festival of Children's Content in Singapore and I took my book for an official launch there, even though I'd already launched in Hong Kong. And many people were interested immediately and said, oh, who's the publisher of your book? And I said, me, I self-published it. And their faces fell. It was an official book festival. And then they kind of said, well, it's a very good self-published book. And a few of them took me aside and said, but if you really want to do right by your community, you should try and get traditionally published. Now, having said that, the schools across Hong Kong have welcomed my self-published book far more than I ever imagined. Children resonate with it, children love it. But there was this challenge now placed in front of me. Could I get published by one of the big four out there? Could Penguin or HarperCollins or anyone pick me up and say, you are good enough to be published? Could I get an agent? These were huge, huge obstacles. I just thought, not in a lifetime. But I was up for the challenge. So I read so much. I was a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I listened to all kinds of children's book podcasts. I joined groups like 12 by 12. I joined groups like, I'm trying to think now. Put me on the spot. There were many, many groups that I joined. Children's Book Academy. Anyway, I was basically listening to webinars, Highlights Foundation, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And during COVID, it was the best time, right? I had plenty of time to finish my novel and really try and put my best foot forward. And I sent off to several agents and I heard back from 3. And in the end, it was great because I had a choice. I could actually choose. It was actually a really tough choice. I remember ringing up all my writer friends saying, I don't know what to do because they're all so wonderful. And in the end, I signed with a wonderful man named Ruben Pfeffer, who was my agent. And I worked with him for a few weeks to take my book from sort of an A to an A-star level. And then we sent it out to publishers And I had a dream editor. It was Alessandra Balzar. And I don't know if you've read the book Other Words for Home by Jasmine Walger. I fell in love with that verse novel. I fell in love with her writing, and I just thought her editor was absolutely fantastic. And it'd be a dream for me to work with that editor. So I said, can you please submit to her? And he did, and she loved it. And it's a really interesting story because at the time, actually shortly before this, I had the offer to do a TED Talk. And I actually turned it down. Well, originally I wanted to turn it down because I really want to finish my book. But my family sat me down and said, you've been selected to give a TED Talk.
Yes,
that doesn't happen every day. Yeah. So I put my book on hold and I went and I did the TED Talk. Now, what happens when an editor from a big four, publishing house wants your book, it's not a done deal. She then has to convince her team. But there are usually 4 or 5 people with their own author trying to say, okay, no, let's buy this book. Oh, okay, no, let's buy this book. And so they each have to present for about 20 minutes. And then the team select one author. And so when Alessandra went in there, she had 20 minutes to pitch me and my book. So what did she do? She said, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to play you a TED Talk. And she played my TED Talk. So it wasn't her pitching me. It was me pitching me. Wow. And they could hear my journey. They could hear my passion. They could hear why this was the book of my heart. And I got the book deal. And it was just incredible. So I will say that sometimes you might have to do a detour, but it might actually end up blessing you because that's what my experience with TEDx Tin How Women did for me. And so I got the book deal with HarperCollins, Balzer and Bray. And the rest is history. It was just incredible. So then 2 years later, 2024, my book came out. And it's
what a journey.
It's absolutely.
So we've learned through this story that you should always listen to your family.
Yes.
When they say, what are you doing? Stop this right now. No one ever turns down a TED Talk because they're finishing a book. What?
Very true.
Get up and do it. And in the end, that served you really well
It did.
for publication. So that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It's really wonderful to hear. So why are you interested in writing for children? Obviously, you do write poetry like the poem you've just read now, which was originally published in Imprint, an anthology of writing published every year by the Women in Publishing Society in Hong Kong.
Yes.
So how are these different audiences and what draws you to writing for children?
I write for children because I think they're the most intelligent people in the world. Writing for children, I think, is the most difficult audience. They are not fooled by anything. They are incredibly smart. And you've got to be really smart with your writing to grip them, to hook them, first of all, and to keep them with you throughout the text, whether it be a picture book. And I tell you, picture books are the toughest thing to write, Julia. Yeah. But even novels, just to keep them with you throughout, because kids won't give you any grace and say, oh, I'm sure it'll warm up. I'm sure it'll get better. No. They've got lots of distractions.
2 pages if it's not good.
They've got lots of distractions in the world today. And so your writing has to be absolutely top quality. And for me, it's a challenge again. I want to entertain. I want to educate, not in a way that's lecturing, not in a way that's, there's no lesson in what I'm trying to say. I'm just offering perspective, giving them space to draw their own conclusions, but I really want to offer up some food for thought. And I can't think of a better audience than children. I'm so grateful to the Hong Kong Women in Publishing Society for giving us a platform of imprint, because I do love writing for adults as well. And so, there's a platform for my poetry, for my short stories. And my best short stories are the ones that have a little bit of a twist. So I do recommend that you go to your favorite bookazine store or any of the local bookstores in Hong Kong that carry imprint, or even the Women in Publishing website, and buy back copies, because there's so many great stories. There's so much rich writing from Hong Kong writers. And you might find some of my short stories, which always have a bit of a twist in the tail and really make you think.
Ooh. Well, that's a teaser. If I've never heard one. Really, really good. Tell us a bit about your literary influencers. And I don't mean influencers as in, book talk people, although they could be interesting too. But I'm talking about authors who've really shaped you as a reader, as a writer.
Julia, how much time do you have?
I know it's such a hard question. And we discussed this just before. You asked me the same question and I went blank.
It's
even though I'm a librarian and supposedly I read all the time. I do, but there's just so many. It's really hard to pick a few names.
It is hard, but if I had to...
I'm making you do it now.
I love Jason Reynolds, Kwame Alexander, Jasmine Walker, Kate Messner, Nikki Grimes, Leslie Newman, Jennifer Choldenenko, Kimberly Brubaker-Brandley, Matt De La Pena, Kobe Yamada. I mean, it goes on. I don't even know where to stop. But can I also just give a shout out to some Indian authors who are out there? Because before finding them, children's book authors who are Indian, I never thought I could be a children's book author. I just didn't think it was possible. I didn't know enough about it. And I think now, because of technology, I can be someone who lives in Hong Kong with an agent who lives in Boston, with an editor who lives in New York. But before, years ago, when we didn't have this, it was just impossible. So I want to give a shout out to people like Uma Krishnaswamy, Matali Perkins, Rajani LaRocca, Padma Venkataram, Suma Subram, I don't know if I'm going to say her name right, sorry, Suma Subramaniam, Veera Hiranandani, and so many more. Thank you. I see you. I appreciate you. And I now have the confidence that I can put words out into the world and people will welcome them.
Oh, wow. I hope they hear you. I hope they listen to this. That's really, again, we're talking about impact. And, you're saying for you growing up, you didn't see yourself in these books, or you didn't have characters that were like you or authors that had your journey, and you never thought you could be a published writer in Hong Kong. So I think that's really powerful, and it's amazing to recognize as adults now, where we've come from, who's shaped us. So I really hope that they get to hear this or can send it to them and say, hey,
yeah,
there's a little shout out for you.
Absolutely.
Sadly, drawing to the end now. So I feel like we could keep going forever. But I want to know, I'm being very nosy, but what are you working on at the moment? What are you looking forward to for the next half of 2025?
Okay, so I actually have another book coming out next year.
Oh.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's a narrative nonfiction picture book, and it's a reimagining of Partition, and it's called Their Story is Our Story. And I'm super excited because I'm working with an illustrator, an Indian-American illustrator based in Canada. And he's phenomenal. I mean, he blows my mind. His artwork blows my mind. And I'm working with R.L. Richardson from Chronicle Books. I love all the books that come out from Chronicle Books. So it's just a thrilling experience for me. I'm also working on my next novel in verse, and it is set partly in India and partly in Los Angeles. And that was wonderful because I just recently traveled to Los Angeles for my daughter's graduation from UCLA. And it was so exciting to see all these places that I've researched and written about come to life.
Wow.
And I learned a lot because I've, described coming out of a certain residence and what the trees look like. And I've had to go back and correct it now because I've seen the trees and they would look nothing like the way I described them. But yeah, it was just wonderful to be there, immersed in the area I've spent the last year and a half writing about. Really exciting to go and visit the places that I'd written about. And I'm the second half of this year, I'm really hoping to finish this novel in verse and hopefully get it sold.
Okay, well, hopefully this won't be another excuse to turn down a TEDx talk or whatever opportunity is your way. So I love that you're saying human experience, just experience in general, is irreplaceable, right? No matter, you did all this research, but then you went there and it was something else.
Yes.
It was something, and you talked about those sensory details, right? I think that's very important. I'm always worried when I try to write, and if it's something I haven't experienced firsthand, it's about that tension, because obviously you don't want to write only about your life, right, and your experience. But at the same time, if it's something that's too far from your life, it might not sound authentic. So I think what you're saying is sort of trying to bridge that with the research that's important. If you can, just get yourself there.
That's right.
Experience it.
Do it. It will make your writing so much richer.
And finally, do you have any advice for aspiring writers of all ages?
Well, it's funny. I have so many people who come up to me and say, Ritu, I really want to write a book. And I say to them, great, what have you written? And they say, well, nothing yet. And I say, well, the first step is to sit down and write every day. Either set yourself a word count of 500 words a day, or set yourself a time of 20 minutes a day, because that's doable. And I think once you build in that daily habit, if you go over 20 minutes, great. If you only do the 20 minutes, you can still feel good about yourself. And I think it's really important that you set yourself manageable goals so that you feel good. I would say definitely read in the genre that you're trying to write, but read everything, because you can always steal parts and bits from other genres as well, and just ideas that percolate. I would say write what you know, but also write what you want to know. I write what I want to learn more about, because the best way to learn about something is to start writing about it, because you end up going down so many rabbit holes in research, and it makes you so much wiser as a person. And they say the same thing about learning. If you really want to learn something, teach what you're trying to learn to somebody else, and you will learn. So yeah, that would be my biggest advice, would be write what you know, but write what you want to know.
Ooh. And the element of habits is important, isn't it? Like you said, maybe even 20 minutes, as long as it's regular, every day. Do you have a preferred time, a preferred place to write?
Yeah, I'm a morning person. And I have when my daughter's away, her room becomes my office. And it's surrounded by musical instruments, and it's all her dance awards. So it's a very artistic room, and it kind of is very inspiring to sit there. And I feel like, okay, all the muses are around me now. Let's go and let's get creative. But I do stumble. I do get blocked sometimes. And then there are the hills that we can climb in Hong Kong. Or there's always body fit class or a yoga class that I can run to and get a bit of fresh air, come back with a new perspective, and then sit down to step into a different world again.
Ooh. So when you get a bit of a writer's block, stop, pause, take a step back, do something else, come back to it.
Absolutely.
Usually that works.
Yes, I would
but
think.
Write every day.
Yes.
And start now.
Start today.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ritu. This was wonderful. Again, I feel like we could just keep going. But you know, you're a busy lady, so I'll have to let you go at some point. But thank you. It was really, really wonderful to hear about all of your experience, and I hope that we can have you back for more.
Oh, thank you so much, Julia. You've been an incredible host. I'm so grateful, and I'm so proud of you for putting this podcast together. It's a labor of love, and you do it so well.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to Local Lingo. We're looking at the phrase mind the gap, straight from the Hong Kong MTR and Ritu Hemnani's poem. Aidan, the Cantonese is 請留意月台空隙, right?
Spot on. You even got the tones. 請, please. 月台空隙, the platform gap. The heart of it is 留意.
So pay attention. It's more active than the English mind, isn't it? It's not just avoidance, it's conscious awareness.
Exactly. It's a call to be present. And that's the genius of the poem. It hijacks this mundane safety warning.
And it turns it into a demand for social awareness. The poem shouts 留意 at us to pay attention to the gaps of prejudice and the silence of bystanders, not just the space between the train and the platform.
You've got it. It's a plea to truly see what's happening around us.
Powerful. Thanks, Aidan. This was your monthly dose of words from the fragrant harbour, brought to you by the writers of Hong Kong, past and present. Have a great month of reading, and until next time on Hong Kong Lit Club, Hatigin.